On November 28th, a dramatic scene unfolded at a shopping center in Mexico City. Mexican authorities sent a large team to raid stores inside a mall. Many Chinese merchants rushed to move their goods out of the shops in a chaotic scramble. The exterior of the mall displayed large golden Chinese characters for Yiwu International Trade City and Mexico Mart. Inside, all the stores had Chinese signage. Later that night, video showed a large presence of Mexican police surrounding the Yiwu Trade City, with seals placed on the main entrance of the building. The raid was conducted by over 200 law enforcement officers, including Marines, intelligence agents, city police, and trade officials. The authorities seized more than 260,000 items, valued at about 75 million pesos, around 3.7 million US dollars. These goods had no import documents or product labels, and roughly 90,000 items were counterfeit brand name products, including Marvel, Sanrio, Disney, and Nintendo. The goods were reportedly from China, Malaysia, Indonesia, Bangladesh, and Vietnam, and took authorities 7 hours to collect. Marcelo Ebrard, Mexico's Minister of the Economy, commented that the seized products included massive amounts of counterfeit Disney goods, most of which lacked any labels and violated all regulations. He emphasized the government's commitment to combating counterfeit goods nationwide, mentioning that this was the third raid on the mall. Ebrard also stated that the government would encourage local businesses to produce goods to replace Chinese imports. At a press conference, Ebrard announced that the government would confiscate the entire Yiwu Trade City building and destroy all the illegal products, as per the president's orders. He also mentioned that customs officers and shipping personnel would be investigated if import documents or receipts were found. On December 1st, a Chinese merchant from Yiwu Trade City posted on social media, revealing more details about the situation. The post described how, after a night of conflict and goods being seized, the building was sealed. The raid, which started with the seizure of a few large stores, escalated into a full-scale operation involving Marines. In just a few days, the entire building was emptied. This was the second time the mall had been shut down in recent months. The first closure, earlier in the year, was due to claims of structural damage from an earthquake. After paying hefty fines, the mall reopened in late August. However, this time, it seemed like Yiwu Trade City might be permanently shut down. The day after the second closure, on November 29th, local merchants captured images of the entrances to Yiwu Trade City, where police officers were guarding sealed doors. Some merchants and workers who had lost their jobs gathered nearby to protest. One merchant, known on social media as Mexico Xiao Xiaolin, also posted a video.
The
Yiwu International Trade City in Mexico is in trouble and was blocked again last night. This is the third fine to be paid in 2024. The money hasn't even warmed up in their hands, and now we're being asked to pay the fine once more. Some store owners may have received the news in advance and started moving goods. The landlord made the wrong decision again and closed the building early before the government closed it down, which caused great panic. 70 or 80% of the goods were rescued last night. Look at the police who were enforcing the seizure. They just watch everyone move the goods away without stopping us. Their target is not the goods, but our building.
He believes that after Trump takes office again, the second round of trade war with China will definitely happen. Since Mexico is part of the US-Mexico-Canada economic zone, it will definitely be affected. This means that it will be harder for Chinese companies to invest and start businesses in Mexico. However, some online users commented on a video saying, "Dumping goods at low prices and internal competition are killing the global market. It should be banned." Others think that no shops can pass the test. Some netizens also believe that this is Mexico's first step in cooperating with the US to crack down on Chinese companies that are laundering their product origins. They argue that this is just the beginning, and future crackdowns will likely spread to manufacturing as well. There's analysis suggesting that the timing of the sudden inspection in Mexico is significant. This is because Trump has warned that on his first day in office, he would impose a 25% tariff on Mexican products. The raid happened on the same day that the Mexican president spoke with Trump. The Mexican president had also previously stated that she plans to replace imports from China with products made in Mexico. Therefore, some analysts believe this inspection is Mexico showing its determination to cooperate with the U.S. in cracking down on Chinese companies who are hiding their product origins in Mexico. It's known that Yiwu City in Mexico was built by Chinese businessman Lin Yun, who followed the model of Yiwu's international small commodity market back in Yiwu, China. Together with his partners, he invested in malls such as Guangzhou City, Yiwu City, Electronics Mall, and International Trade City. These malls mainly sell electronics, home goods, and clothing, aiming to make Mexico an important hub for Chinese small commodities in Latin America. It's important to note that China's Yiwu market is often associated with counterfeit and low-quality products. Therefore, the Mexican Yiwu city inherited this reputation, with many counterfeit and substandard goods flooding the market. This could be one reason for the Mexican authorities' repeated crackdowns. As international trade tensions increase, and with China's market becoming more competitive, many Chinese entrepreneurs have started looking for opportunities abroad. Mexico has become a popular destination due to its unique position in Latin America and its membership in the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Free Trade Agreement, USMCA. Thanks to this agreement, Chinese citizens can actually enter Mexico with a long-term U.S. or Japan visa, bypassing the need for a separate visa. According to China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mexico is China's second-largest trade partner in Latin America. In 2023, the total trade volume between China and Mexico reached over 100 billion US dollars, with China's exports to Mexico amounting to 81.5 billion US dollars and imports from Mexico totaling 18.7 billion US dollars. China mainly exports electronic components, kitchen products, and automobile parts to Mexico. For years, some US politicians have been concerned about Chinese goods entering the US market via Mexico. Their concerns are not unfounded, as Chinese companies have been doing this for over a decade. According to China's state media, in April 2023, nearly 3,000 Chinese companies have entered the Mexican market. China is Mexico's third-largest source of investment in Asia. Chinese investment in Mexico has steadily increased since 2011, growing from 264 million US dollars in 2011 to 1.3 billion US dollars in 2021, a nearly fourfold increase over 9 years. A report from the National Autonomous University of Mexico, led by Professor Enrique Dussel Peters, shows that from 2020 to 2023, Chinese direct investment in Mexico reached nearly 7 billion US dollars, with a 48% increase in 2022 compared to 2021. Why has Mexico become a favored investment destination for Chinese businesses? Yue Yunxia, director of the Economic Research Office at the Institute of Latin American Studies at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, explained in an interview that Mexico's membership in the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, is an important factor attracting Chinese companies. Under the USMCA, many products imported from Mexico to the US and Canada benefit from low or even zero tariffs. In 2023, over 83% of Mexico's imports went to the U.S., and 75% of its imports to Canada also ended up in the U.S. Yue believes that Mexico's wide range of free trade agreements has created an open trade and investment environment with a global trade network, making it an attractive destination for Chinese companies. According to the World Trade Organization, U.S. household consumption accounts for over 30% of global household consumption, making it the largest consumer market in the world. In 2007, China surpassed Canada to become the largest source of U.S. imports, with a share of 16.3%. This peaked in 2017 at 21.6%, before gradually declining. By 2023, China's share fell to 13.9%, nearly the same as Canada's 13.7%. In contrast, Mexico's share rose to 15.4%, overtaking China as the U.S.'s largest source of imports. Data from the U.S. Department of Commerce shows that U.S. imports from Mexico increased by 5% in 2023, reaching 475 billion US dollars. Clearly, the trade war has caused China's exports to the U.S. to drop sharply. To avoid the high costs of tariffs, Chinese companies have moved production to other countries, sourcing raw materials or intermediate goods from China, processing them abroad, and then exporting the finished products to the U.S. Although most of the value creation comes from China, U.S. trade statistics are unable to track these products originating from China. In this process, Mexico has become an important transit hub for Chinese goods entering the U.S. market. Under the Chinese government strategy to encourage companies to go global and the related policies and incentives, Chinese businesses have increasingly invested in Mexico and set up factories. These investments mainly focus on industries closely tied to Mexico's trade with the United States. According to data from the American Enterprise Institute, Chinese investments in Mexico, exceeding $1 million, are concentrated in the manufacturing sector. One of the key industries is the automotive industry. The automotive sector is a pillar of Mexico's economy, and the U.S. relies heavily on parts manufactured in Mexican factories. From 2018 to 2022, around 42% of motor vehicle parts imported to the U.S. came from Mexico. The state of Nuevo León is a major hub for Mexico's automotive industry. In 2022, Chinese direct investment in Nuevo León accounted for 48.3% of the total investment in the region. There are reports that Chinese car manufacturers like BYD, SAIC-MG, and Chery plan to build factories in Mexico. However, given the current situation, these plans may fall through. With the backing of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, Chinese companies have quickly expanded overseas. They are not only exporting capital, but also communist ideology, a flood of counterfeit goods, and corruption. Meanwhile, the families of CCP officials and the owners of companies funded by the Chinese government are showing up around the world. Wealthy Chinese students driving luxury sports cars and elderly Chinese women spending heavily on luxury goods are often from these families. Many may think that Chinese investment could be a good way to boost the local economy, but along with Chinese investments come various traps. The Belt and Road Initiative has already provided many examples of this. A research lab at William and Mary University in Virginia shows that by the end of 2023, China had provided between $1.1 trillion and $1.5 trillion in loans to 20,000 projects across 165 developing countries. The report notes that nearly 80% of the countries that accepted China's loans are now facing fiscal difficulties. China's loans have largely gone towards building infrastructure projects like roads, airports, railways, and power plants, covering vast regions in Latin America, Southeast Asia, and beyond. These projects have contributed to economic growth in some countries and brought their governments closer to Beijing, making China the world's largest creditor nation. However, China's lending practices have drawn widespread criticism from the international community. Critics argue that China's lending, which often ignores the debt repayment capacity of the borrowing countries, is irresponsible and has led some developing nations into debt traps. Sri Lanka is a typical victim of China's debt trap. The Sri Lankan government went bankrupt because it couldn't repay its massive debt to China and ended up leasing its port to China as a form of repayment. African countries like Zambia, Ethiopia, and Ghana have also struggled to repay their Chinese loans. A report from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, highlights two main ways in which China has exacerbated democratic backsliding in Latin America. One is promoting authoritarianism, and the other is protecting governments that have moved away from democracy. The report also notes that China's influence has had unintended consequences, increasing political instability and further eroding the rule of law. For example, Chinese companies have been willing to participate in regional corruption and unfair business practices, which has helped sustain long-standing corruption in the region. The findings of the report suggest that China has clearly played a role in encouraging and accelerating the democratic decline seen in the Western Hemisphere in recent years. CSIS also outlined how China has been influencing political dynamics in Latin America. China's Belt and Road Initiative entered the region in 2017, and to date, 22 countries have joined. Earlier this year, the CSIS released a research report analyzing the relationship between China's growing influence and the democratic backslide in Latin American countries. The report particularly focused on the economic dependence of these countries on Beijing, the export of authoritarianism from China to the region, and how China has facilitated corrupt activities in Latin American governments. Taking advantage of the Belt and Road Initiative, China has exerted influence over Latin American nations through a series of both governmental and non-governmental exchanges. The report states that between 2002 and 2017, the Chinese Communist Party's International Liaison Department engaged in over 300 interactions with 75 political parties in the region. These interactions helped Beijing promote its governance model and strengthened ties with both current and future leaders in these countries. Additionally, China has established 44 Confucius Institutes and 18 Confucius classrooms across the region's universities to export communist ideology. China expert Wang He summarized, through the Belt and Road Initiative, the Chinese Communist Party is exporting corruption, authoritarianism, and debt traps, with corruption being a particularly prominent issue. Since assuming office in December 2023, Argentine President Javier Milei made it clear that he did not want to establish ties with communist countries. Following his election victory, Argentina's relationship with China has soured, with all levels of cooperation coming to a halt. While Argentina was under the rule of the Kirchners between 2003 and 2015, China strategically utilized Argentina's geographic location to launch and invest in 26 projects, totaling $27 billion in investments. Currently, each project is at a different stage of development. Argentina's prolonged economic and political crises have complicated China's involvement in various infrastructure and technological initiatives in the country. Malay's government decided to halt negotiations for purchasing Chinese fighter jets, opting instead for US-made F-16s. Subsequently, after an incident involving Argentina's foreign minister meeting with Taiwanese representatives, China suspended its financing to Argentina. Additionally, at the end of last year, the Argentine government announced that President Milei had formally declined an invitation to join the BRICS group. This is the latest major policy shift since Milei took office and fulfilled his campaign promise to not align with communist countries. Milei's public decision to not join BRICS dealt a blow to China. For a long time, expanding BRICS has been a goal of the Chinese Communist Party, which views the group as a potential counterbalance to the Western-dominated world order. However, Milei's stance is clear. He will not promote or encourage relationships with dictators, communists, or those who do not respect peace or hold democratic values. Mexico's crackdown on the Yiwu International Trademark is just the beginning. The deeper logic behind this event is the collaboration with the democratic nations, led by the US, to resist and contain the expansion and infiltration of communist ideology by China. This gradual withdrawal of Chinese enterprises from Mexico is a foreseeable development in the near future.